That could work. There's always work to be done, isn't there? Hi everybody, thanks for joining me for the longer version of Leonore by Beethoven. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to practice this. Of course, there are two calls, number 2 and number 3. As I think I said previously, I can never keep them straight, but they are very similar and they have similar goals musically, very similar style. So anything that you would work on one is going to apply to the other one. I think it's number 2 that's normally requested, and that's the one that I played on the intro. And I'm just going to work through it. I'm going to practice it for you and show you. I talked a little bit about pitch. There's playing in tune with a tuner, and there's playing in tune with the instrument. And when you're working on pitch, and I'm going to do a real drill down on this, how to work with a tuner and the problems that you need to avoid, because you can hurt yourself with a tuner. You can hurt yourself mentally, you can get discouraged emotionally, you can mess yourself up physically because you're trying to force things to play in tune. The first step is find out where the note rings in the horn and get yourself adjusted with that so that it's comfortable. And that way, no matter how, where you're playing in the range, no matter how loud you're playing, no matter what the articulation might be, that is the basis of everything that you're doing. So what I recommend is play through it as a slur first. And I do this a lot. Why? Because you're playing one continuous sound like singing. When we pronounce words when we're singing, then we have something that's more similar to articulation on the trumpet, which I call actually pronunciation rather than articulation, because it's almost like you're pronouncing words. The thing to keep in mind is you have continuous tone all the time, even if the notes are very marcato and very separated. So let's go with a line first. Now what I'm doing what I'm doing right now is looking for the center of the note. Some people call it the resonant sweet spot of the note. Many of you understand about this. Now, that resonant sweet spot on an E flat fingered with second valve may be out of tune. If you're playing on a C trumpet, very likely to be out of tune. So you either have to compensate for that in some way, or you have to use an alternate fingering. And you probably know these suggestions from your teachers. This gets a little complicated, but you should be happy that you don't play French horn, because French horns have dozens of possible alternate fingerings because of the fundamental of the instrument being so much lower than trumpet, and also a B flat horn and an F horn. You get 2 horns in one, so to speak. So lots of choices. Talk to a French horn player sometime and learn about how they use this. So the thing to keep in mind is you get a different sound. And clearly you get a different pitch. So everything you do is a compromise. And what you're looking for is a good compromise. It's physically easier to do, maybe more responsive. It's got a better quality of sound. It's simpler in some way and more beautiful. That's really what you need to keep in mind. And it fits with the other notes better. So these are things you're gonna run into in many, many excerpts, but especially in this one, which requires very precise pitch. As you go from higher to lower, for most trumpet players, there's a pitch problem. So that E flat is normally flat. A lot of people will be actually playing that sharp because they're pushing up on the note. And then, and this is what they will be listening for in an audition, because so many people have problems with this, even really good players. I myself have problems with it, there's no question about it. The G can tend to sail. Why? You're coming from the low register, the music is getting more exciting, and you're blowing stronger, and you push that pitch higher. And you'll hear this on recordings. You know, you'll hear why? Because it's one of the traps that we fall into. So when you go to an audition, if you solve these problems, you're going to stand out, because most players have not solved the problems. Or if they have solved them, they've done it in such a way that it takes away from the quality of the music. So, alternate fingerings. I'm not telling you to do this, I'm saying it's possible. So when you play from low to high, if you always drive the note sharp, you can do one of two things. You can search for solutions like alternate fingerings, or you can figure out how to play the trumpet better. Or maybe you need a new trumpet or a new mouthpiece, or both, in order to make it easier to play in tune. And for a high-level craftsperson, this is something that you want to be doing because that's the only way to be competitive in this arena. It takes someone who really is meticulous and cares about the quality of what they're doing. So let's do the pitch again. Well, that's very low. I'm bending it low. Now I used an alternate fingering. I don't have to bend the note. I can actually overblow the note and push it sharp a little bit, and I can still hold it down with 1 and 2. Now, the question then becomes, does that sound good? How does it sound out in the hall? What's the resonant quality of it? Does it match the other notes? You see how detailed this gets? And so this is the kind of work. But even if you don't take it this far, and we're just getting started, by the way, you're going to find that it's going to improve your playing to aim at that higher target of getting the notes so that if they sounded as a chord, that it would be perfectly in tune. That's a high value target and something that you should be striving for regardless of what genre you're playing in. A little bit of work on that every day sharpens your ear up, and you're going to do it automatically. And it's a little easier when you're playing with other people, provided, of course, they're playing in tune. This is one reason why it's much more challenging for any player to play in a group of less experienced players, less accomplished players, because pitch becomes more and more of a problem. Whereas when you play in kind of an elite group, you know, like the Boston Symphony, for example, it's expected that everybody's doing their job in this area, and so you get kind of a synergy, kind of a critical mass of all these people that are playing in tune, and everybody's reinforcing one another, and that's a real pleasure. So if you want to play with a group like that, you have to practice like this in order to get there. Now let's talk about a couple of other things. I go on for a long time about this because there's actually so much music in here. Okay, what do you have? Wow, that's a long blow. Well, you can take breaths. Don't worry about that. I practice that way in order to challenge myself to maintain support throughout, regardless of, the way I put it, regardless of where you are in the bow. If you're at the frog, it's easy to create tone, right? It's easy to create pressure on the string. And if you're at the tip, then the leverage is working against you. It's just exactly the same way with our breathing system. That's getting into mechanics. We're not going to deal with that right now, but it's something that you should be training all the time. So just like a violinist, the tone stays exactly the same regardless of where you happen to be in terms of how much air is in your lungs at the time. This is the case with any wind instrument. So very important stuff to practice so that you can have the freedom to play music. Now, a lot of people, when they listen to this excerpt, beyond the pitch, they're listening to timing. They're listening to articulation. Let's do articulation first, since that's the one that is probably the easiest to understand. Now, there are many different interpretations that you can have, but generally speaking, you're going to want this to be marcato. Marcato doesn't mean short. It means extremely well defined. Now, this is an offstage call. You're playing this from behind the scenes somewhere, wherever the conductor decides to put you, by the way, and you have to deal with that situation. But what you need to keep in mind is wherever you're playing, behind the scenes, maybe off stage with the stage door open a little bit, like we often do in the BSO, then what you're striving for is to get the sound that the audience should hear. And that means you're going to have to play this probably pretty strong and extremely marcato. Now, again, it's not short. So if I go, well, that's marcato, but it's ugly. And I've also destroyed the line, you see. So now you're getting a shape and a gesture and a line, which for me is some of the most important ingredients to bring the music alive. It's easy when you're playing this marcato to sacrifice the quality of the line for the quality of the articulation. So what I'm going to suggest is that you practice this at many different note lengths. Listen to the front of the note, but also listen to the back of the note. That's very, very important. So if I play it more longer, so that might be more aesthetically appropriate. Or the conductor won't like it at all and tell you to play it a completely different way. So if you're dealing with preparing for an audition, but even more importantly, if you're dealing with preparing for doing the job in an orchestra, be prepared for changing the style that you're playing in. Most people spend hours practicing this and refining it to get it to sound exactly correct. And there is no such thing as correct. There's higher quality in terms of the craftsmanship. Musically, there's more appropriate, maybe more effective in terms of the listener's experience, and that's all very important. But in an orchestra, it's really about the conductor's vision. So you need to be thinking in terms of being flexible for what they want. So experiment with this. I play it at all different lengths. I play it with all different degrees of explosiveness on the beginning of the attack. And then you make a decision. And the conductor says, no. That is entirely wrong. That's a quote from a conductor I once had. I said it many times to many people. It's not wrong. It's not what he wants. You have to figure out what that musical vision of the conductor is so you can do it. You can't do that unless you practice being flexible. So this is one of the most important things I can tell you about playing excerpts in general, period. Have fun with it. Play it a lot of different musical styles. Okay, what else? Timing. This is critical, and it's the last thing I'm going to talk about today, but as you can probably tell, I could give you a great deal more information. Please feel free to get in touch with me. If you choose, I will try and be responsive as I'm able. Timing. Just use ideas that help you. And here's the beginning. If you played this, there's a certain ring in a certain hall. And I want you to think about the attack and the life of the note and then the decay of the note. That's all connected and I'm blowing straight through. I'm cutting the back end of the note, I'm cutting it off. Not a very appropriate style. Now the note tapers. So this one simple idea I'll leave you with. Listen to the tympani. Ba, ba. Now they have to roll in order to sustain that note. But bom, 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 ba, ba, bom, bom, bom. Match the tympani. In Beethoven and other classical literature, it's basically drum and bugle corps as far as the brass section is concerned. So listen to the other instruments and copy their aesthetic. In this case, the tympani is a great thing to listen to. Okay, I think that's more than enough for today. Please join me for another session anytime you're interested and anytime you can really focus and get involved and also try to apply some of these things that we're working on because you have to taste it for yourself. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you later on down the road. Bye-bye.